This is part 2 of an introduction to studio portraiture using window light studios rather than expensive tools. In some respects, a photographer has to be like a beautician or a barber. And in fact, I've even had beauticians come in and talk to the class about the shapes of people's faces. And in beauty school, they learn that certain haircuts are really good for certain shapes of faces, and other haircuts are kind of a disaster. And they, instead of making people look better, they make people look worse. Same thing in professional portraiture. If you use the wrong light on somebody whose face is of a certain way, you can make that person, not look good. And as a portrait photographer, your goal is to make people look their best. I'm sorry, I see a typo here already. We'll just have to ignore it right now. People's faces come in 3 general shapes. And, really and truly, the beautician will talk about 9 different shapes. But these 3, the oval, the long, sometimes called narrow, and the round face, are about all that a portrait photographer needs to be able to assess. At different times, we've had different standards of beauty. During the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, women were very heavy, and that was considered very beautiful. And if you took a 21st century lady, trim and athletic, and you put them back in those days, people would say, no, they need more heft, they need more weight to be beautiful. So standards of beauty change. And privately, I'm a big fan of everybody being really happy with what they are. But we have forces in our media that keep drilling down into people's heads that an oval face is the best shaped face that a person can have. I can't justify that. I can just say that that's part of our culture. If we went to different parts of the world, certainly things would be different. But we are in our culture, and as a portrait photographer, we're trying to make people look their best. So we need to be able to assess when somebody walks in the door. You guys are going to be lucky. You're going to work with friends or family. But if you're going into photography, wedding and portrait photography, you have to start making judgments about what kind of faces. So one thing to do is look at the general body. If the body is round, the face is going to be round. If the body is basketball thin, slender, skinny, then probably the head is going to be narrow. If everything is in between, then chances are the face will be oval. So we have 3 ways to make people look their best: pose, camera angle, and lighting. And we've already talked about camera angle a little bit, so we need to talk about the other two. Short light is used on round faces and oval faces. Another kind of light, which we call long light, is only used on a narrow face. So if I'm going to teach you one kind of lighting pattern, I'm going to teach you short light because most of the people that you come up against, it will flatter their faces. Now, if we were in class in person, we might construct this thing that I nicknamed the blockhead. And I guess I did that because in drawing class, we block a figure in and we compose it out of blocks. And then we carve it away and then we come up with a figure drawing. But anyways, the head can be thought of as a block with different surfaces. The features that we read, the eyes, the smile, all of that facial feature, that's on one part of the head. And then we have two surfaces that are on the sides, which we hang our ears on, and we have the back of the head and the top of the head. So in short light, what we want to do is we want to tip the face away from the camera. People are going to want to look at the camera. Don't let them look straight into the camera. They're going to look over to the side of the camera, chin pointing towards the side. And then the whole side of the head that has the ear that faces the camera, that's that 3/4 pose, that needs to be in the shade. So this is a picture that I took off the web, and it's really close. It's not perfect, but it's really close to the kind of picture that I'm looking for. Please don't take a full-length body shot. All right. So this is the head and shoulders kind of picture. If you want to make it a little bit longer, you could take it down to waist level, but please don't go to 3/4 length or don't go to full length. And please do not do couples. I just want you to practice with one person. So in a critique, I would say that this eye over here, which is closest to the camera, that ought to have a little bit more light in it. You want to have the sitter very close to the window. So the window is probably almost right against the shoulder here. And that's going to push you right up against the wall with your camera because you don't want to show the window in the picture. A good portrait is a picture that has good eyes in it. You've all heard the old saying that the eyes are the windows of the soul. And really and truly, you can look into a good portrait and you can look at the eyes and you can read something about it. So there are various planes and surfaces on the face that need to have light. You have to have the sitter. You may have to direct the sitter and say, please move your chin towards the window. or please move the chin back away from the window, where they're swiveling their head one way or another to try and get the light to fall like this. The eyes, the forehead, the line of the nose, the mouth, the chin, and then this cheek, the far cheek from the camera, because the head is tilted away from the camera. That's easy. That's going to have a lot of nice light on it. But the shadow coming off of the nose, that can be a problem over here on this side. And sometimes this is called loop lighting, because underneath that close eye to the camera, there's this kind of boomerang shaped patch of light. And over here is shadow. Okay? So when you're setting up your lighting, when you're setting up your pose, you're going to experiment and see whether you can get this, what I call the triangle of light. So shadows are going to be falling in the other part. Definitely the whole side of the head that is closest to the camera, that ear, that whole side needs to be in shadow. So there you go. You got the correct highlights and shadows. This is a good exercise. It gets people to make a little model. And this is an example of when I was teaching high school, we were studying portraiture, window light portraits. So this is not done in a studio. It's very simple, very much like what you're going to do in your own home. And beautiful eyes. There is kind of a triangle of light underneath that cheek that's close to the camera. The ear that's facing the camera is in the shadow. So I call that a good picture. And you can just read down the list here, and you might even want to take notes on this. And when you're taking your portrait this week, I'd like you to maybe have a little checklist here so that you can review and come up. She doesn't have a prop in her hand, but what we did was we had a stool with a back on it, and she turned around the stool and kind of leaned her hands on the back. So that's a head, that's almost a half-length picture. Don't make it any longer than that. All right, here's a little test for you. Is this short light? And how are you going to tell if it is short light? Okay, first off, I only see one ear right over here. That means we have a 3/4 pose. I can't see the other ear. That's good. Now I'm seeing shadow all along this side of the head. And a definition for short light is that the ear facing the camera is in the shadow. So good job if you guessed yes, that is short light. So it's the same question. Do we have short light here? Well, first of all, is it a 3/4 pose? Yes, we only see one ear over here. we can't see the other ear. But look, there's no shadow. Okay, so what we have is we have the highlights from the face running across the side of the head. So the effect of this, what we call long light, is that we try and take a narrow head and we try and light it so that it looks more like the standard of beauty, the oval face. So it is not short light. This is called long light. Okay, so it is a 3/4 pose, right? And I'm starting to see shadow here, shadow here. So I would say that this would be a short light picture. Test your knowledge. Okay. The chin is tilted away. I can only see one ear, which would be right about here, but I can't see it because it's in the shadow. So correct, yes, this is short light. Now, when you get down to photographing kids, you don't want to have a strong contrast ratio of light. You want the light side and the shadow side to be closer together. So you're going to have to really look at this one a little bit. I'm going to say that, yep, we got one ear, and I'm going to say that this coloration right here is actually some shadow going on. So yes, that would be short light. No, this is long light. We don't have a shadow on the ear facing the camera. Now I'd like to point out one other thing here. The tip of her nose has broken the line of her cheek. So if I were drawing her cheek like this over here, and I was trying to make the right kind of pose, the tip of the nose might approach it, but the tip of the nose would then stop and there would be a little bit of distance. But you see what's happened here is that the nose juts out. This is almost a profile shot. I think she gets away with it because she's an actress or a musician or something like that. But no, it is not short light. It is long light.